Good morning and welcome to Progress the Woodfin Way. I am Tish Fletcher and I will be your host today. I am excited to introduce our mayor, Mayor Woodfin. Funny and quick story, when I was transitioning back to Birmingham, I had dinner with my dear friend Roy Wood Jr. And when I tell you he raved about our mayor, he went on and on about the great things happening in Birmingham, the great things happening with this administration. And now 2 years in, I can honestly say I get it. Like, I'm sold. Birmingham is home, and I just love being here. So without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Randall L. Whitson.
Thank you so much for that warm greeting. Good morning, everybody. Listen, I want to thank you all for joining us for an update on major efforts our administration has been taking to really drive progress for our city and communities. Our host, Tish Fletcher, who you all just met, she's a great example, everybody. She's a great example of how engaging residents first and including them in all we do puts us in a position, a really great position that is, to solve problems together. Tish, I want to really thank you and all the ACE alum for what you do to move Birmingham forward. Now, today, everybody, you're going to hear about many initiatives and efforts being driven by city staff as well as some of our external partners. The efforts being discussed today represent a lot of good, hard work by many of you and others in the midst of what we would call extraordinary challenges, confronting our employees, confronting our residents, and confronting our small businesses. But there has been progress in spite of it all, and I think that's important for people to acknowledge and recognize. But it's also important to recognize we're still in the middle of a global pandemic. Even as the weather warms and we enter the spring season, everybody, I want to remind you that we are not yet in full bloom. We're still in the global pandemic. We have officially survived, I would say now, 4 full seasons changes. 4 full seasons have changed. And thanks to leadership from President Biden, coordination of our local partners in COVID safety compliance, and vaccine acceptance, which I'm really proud of, we will be on our way to full recovery by the end of summer. So in the meantime, 2 major strategic initiatives that keep me up at night that we always want to solve for. The first is taking care of our employees. Few people in Birmingham have weathered the storm more than our dedicated employees. That is why I'm leading our budget discussions with the City Council with immediate restoration of paid holidays as well as bringing merit pay, longevity pay, and cost of living adjustments back beginning July 1st of this year when the new fiscal year starts. My priority has always been to protect people's jobs. That meant taking actions that unfortunately put a large burden on our employees. They have been committed to serving the city, and I truly want to thank each of them. And I want to be clear about something, as stated to the council, as stated to our employees, and now stated over and over again publicly. Our budget proposal for fiscal year 2022 starts on July 1 and will include merit pay, COLA, longevity pay, and pay for city holidays. Now, on top of all of that, it has been so important to remain steadfast in advocating for a fully funded pension, an issue discussed from the days of my transition into office up until this month. Now, beyond that, you'll hear more about the American Recovery federal funding coming to our city to help address the tremendous loss of revenue. While we are still gathering guidance from the U.S. Treasury Department on how we can use these funds, I've already directed my team to evaluate possibilities to supporting COVID-related pay for employees. Next, my evergreen priority of neighborhood revitalization remains top of mind, even as we deal with challenges of major weather events over the past few weeks. Our administration has tackled blight, paved streets, and have done so much more at a speed and focus as we've dealt with COVID. 4 years ago, everybody, 4 years ago, I found our community, our city, our 99 neighborhoods in dire need of urgent leadership to address the challenges that are so obvious to many of us. My urgency has not changed. And though the challenges have evolved, I can speak to you today with confidence, knowing that we have made significant progress in revitalizing Birmingham. And I am even more certain of our future. And so again, I end where I started. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mayor Woodfin. As a resident of Norwood, I can say biasly that I am excited about the progress that is happening, excited about the revitalization, especially Caraway. So excited to see these awesome things that are happening in Birmingham. Next up, we have Chief Ed Fields, Senior Advisor and Chief Strategist.
Thank you very much, Tim. And good morning to everyone. Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you for your leadership in this time. To our chiefs, our members of our executive leadership team, the department heads, deputies, all city employees, and to our strategic partners and residents, thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning. We've asked you to carve out a fairly significant amount of time to talk about things that you may not ordinarily hear about. This is critical, that we make space and time to talk about things that are not urgent. But I want to first take a moment to acknowledge where we are, really as a community, as a nation. On Monday morning, I walked past the television here and accidentally saw footage that I had purposely not watched before, which is the full video of George Floyd's murder. And we acknowledge that even as we speak, there's testimony that is triggering folks and reminding us of what we've been through as a community and as a nation for the past year. So we acknowledge that trauma, we acknowledge the hurt, and we want you to know that today is not just about fancy strategic initiatives and X's and O's. It really is about lifting you up. That is why we've asked Tish, a resident, an ACE graduate, to be a part of this conversation, to center us and make sure we stay community and people first. It's also why you're going to hear from other voices of people that are doing more than just pushing numbers. Those are important, obviously, but it is also important to tell stories. And so you'll hear a bit about that. I'm going to truncate my presentation just a bit. So if you'll go to the next slide, I'm going to push through this so that you can hear from many of our other presenters. Just a reminder, we are guided not only by the mayor's voice, but he's codified those in what you see on the screen in the form of our mission, theme, and core values. And so those are posted everywhere. I won't recite them. I wanted to recite them this morning, but I think it's more important that we go forward and talk about things that perhaps you haven't heard. So the next slide will share with you and remind you that we're operating under a strategic plan branded the Woodfin Way. That plan has 6 major elements, and there is nothing that we're doing in this city, even the things that we did not plan to do, like address COVID, that doesn't fit neatly in these buckets or are cross-sectional in terms of the work that we do. Next slide, please. So we came in with a very, very ambitious agenda, and the mayor's charged his office of strategy to really look beyond the urgent moment, but to also consider where we're going. And so big picture, in 20 seconds, we have over 93 strategic initiatives across all of our departments and divisions in the city. And as of today, we have completed more than 50% of those, nearly 50% of those. And then we have another 25% or so that are very, very robustly in the queue. I will tell you that some of this graphic will change if we talk again in 90 days. Major projects like the Real-Time Crime Center will be done, and that number changes again. So let's go to the next slide. I want to let you know that of all the things we're doing, there is one that has been evergreen, even throughout a pandemic. It has been our focus on neighborhood revitalization. So we have really worked harder to communicate what we're doing and where we are. So if you're following us on social media or you subscribe to the city newsletter, you see some of these images really telling the story of streets and potholes and demolitions and all the tremendous cleanup efforts from our teams of public works and beyond. So I just want to make sure you all know that we're still centered around that number one objective. Next slide, please. So of the 93 initiatives, I wanted to just highlight 7 of those. There are many more that we could talk about, but I want to remind you all that there's been a lot of work done here. The Birmingham Promise was launched. We've got major revitalization in neighborhoods. I'm looking around the room at some of our team members. They're young enough to have been born at the time that some of these properties were already dilapidated. Caraway, Ramsey McCormick, Century Plaza to some extent, Banks Middle School, Inslee High School. You're going to continue to hear more about what we're doing there, but I want to remind you that this was already something that the mayor had intended to do, and with support from the council, he's been able to advance the agenda. There are a number of other items featured here we're very proud of, but this list is certainly not exhaustive. Next slide, please. So this is where I want to spend a little bit of time, and I want to talk about, first I want to frame up how we think about strategic initiatives. Those that are attached to the mayor's strategic plan, and then you have others that have really been born through interacting with folks. And one of the central tenets of this administration has been to work well with other people, starting with the council, but also public-private partnerships that go into every sector. And so there's 4 frames that I think about are public-private partnerships. Those initiatives that are really born, I call them Woodfin Innovations, Birmingham Promise, Prosper Birmingham, which you'll hear more about in the months to come. BHAM Strong, which was our organization stood up in response to the COVID crisis, and BHAM Talks, which is an early childhood program that is poised to go statewide to other cities now. We've got co-owned transformative projects like the BRT program and World Games and the BJCC expansion, among others. And then there's a host of national initiatives. So let's go to the next slide. I just want to touch on a couple of the national initiatives that we're a part of. Frankly, we don't spend a lot of time talking about them because the mayor has made our priority those things that are very local. But I want you to know that there's a deep interlock between national organizations who are really giving us capacity to go after what we call blue ocean strategies, those things that are really beyond the most immediate. They are giving us capacity. So you have a list of them here. We're going to be producing a memorandum following this event that we will post on our strategy page. So we'll save a little time and just go to the next slide. I want to lift up one of these partnerships, which is Fuse Fellowships. Some of y'all know the good-looking guy there on the screen. His name is John Legend. He's won a few Grammy Awards, and he has funded a national effort to drive equitable change through cities, through municipalities. So he has funded up to 5 executive fellows to support the city of Birmingham and in its agenda to drive equitable solutions. Presently, we have 2 fellows that are working with the city or in alignment with the city. One is in our community development department, our planning, engineering, and permission department, where we're focused on equitable development and environmental change in North Birmingham. And then we have another partner, fellow rather, that is serving as Chief Operating Officer for Birmingham Promise, with another 2 people in the queue to support our social justice efforts at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, as well as housing innovation, things like tiny homes, things that the mayor's asked us to explore. So let's go to the next slide. Perfect. My last point is really on what's in the queue. So you've got January through April. I want to just highlight one point in each month, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Tish so you can hear from some really exciting activities taking place here inside the City Hall, as well as with some external partners. I want to highlight, y'all, we've had some very significant weather events in the last few weeks. Right now, the mayor and the council and others are doing their best to support our residents in Roebuck, as well as adjacent in Centerpoint. They're still reeling from issues from their tornadoes. Well, we have another major milestone coming up on April 27th. Circle your calendar. That's the 10-year anniversary of the tremendous tornadoes that came through, really reshaped parts of our community, including Pratt. We want to be in reflection mode, but we also want to be in projection mode. Where do we want to go from here? Next slide, please. Lots of things happening in May. We'll be presenting the budget, the mayor's proposed budget to the city council. as well as our mayor will be celebrating a very special birthday. Just a shout out to him, big 4-0, almost over the hill, brother, almost. In June, we will also be recognizing another anniversary. It's one that kind of comes with some mixed emotions because of the challenges that came with it. But the Confederate Monument came down in June of last year. I think that you'll hear about another effort around Lynn Park today from our social justice director that's highly related. So I want you to tune in and think about, where do we go from here as a community? And in July, we'll be celebrating the 1-year countdown to the World Games, which had been punted back because of COVID. Lastly, in August, we will have our disparity study recommendations coming out of our Innovation and Economic Opportunity team. So that is a quick round on a bunch of things that are happening that are separate from the 10 initiatives that you're about to hear about for the next 30 to 35 minutes. Following their presentations, there will be ample time for Q&A. So if you have questions, make sure you place them in the chat. We have a team that will pull those questions out and be in a position to answer those. So thank you all very much for putting people first. Tiff, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Ed. I am excited. There are so many good things in there to be excited about. So first up, we're going to start with some of the city-led initiatives. We have Tiffany Thompson from the Office of Governmental Affairs, and she'll be talking to us about Pardons for Progress. Tiffany.
Thank you, Tish, and good morning, everyone. Mayor Woodfin really is the mayor that truly believes in putting people first. Mayor Woodfin created the Pardons for Progress initiative to remove a potential barrier to employment for an individual who has a previous misdemeanor marijuana conviction. This strategic initiative through the mayor's office allows individuals previously convicted of a misdemeanor marijuana possession or marijuana paraphernalia possession in the city of Birmingham Municipal Court to apply for a pardon. This means that the individual has satisfied all of the court requirements and the case is completely closed. This is an opportunity for those needing a second chance to take power into their future. Section 12-14-15 Code of Alabama 1975 reads, the mayor may remit fines and such costs as payable to the municipality and commute sentences imposed by a municipal court or the court to which an appeal was taken for violations of municipal ordinances, and may grant pardons after convictions for violation of such ordinances, and he shall report his action to the council or other governing body. So let's get into the weeds, and no pun intended. Did you all know that 6,000 people in the city of Birmingham are eligible for a pardon? If you didn't, a pardon is given for those cases dating back as far as the case may go. An individual considered for a pardon will be able to get either charge, whether it be the possession of marijuana paraphernalia, or they may have an opportunity to be considered for both. The process includes going online to www.pardonsforprogress.com, and it takes about 6 weeks to review the application and communicate back to the individual. The pardon is only a pardon. The individual must have satisfied all of their fiduciary responsibilities. With their case, during our 90-day application push, we have received 42 applications, and 4 people have been recipients of pardons. Our percentage rate based on our goal was 46%. You can see the breakdown of the demographics of men and women, and also the age groups that we received applications from. The largest group of those, as you would see, are the age group of 18 to 35. So over the past 3 months, we have been heavily engaged in getting the word out through direct mail, Birmingham Times, social media, WATV, We even sent the influencer letter to some to some mailboxes. But most recently, we have partnered with iPush Magazine and What's Happening Birmingham. We are the only city that has implemented a program such as this. However, currently in the state legislature, there is a bill that would help to remove these barriers as well. I venture to say that we planted the seed, or at the very least, push the conversation to a wider audience, and they have taken it and run with it. We've heard success stories from those being able to secure better employment after they have received their pardon, and from those who have cases that were outside of the city's jurisdiction who have just appreciated someone looking out to help them and potentially give them a fresh start. So I would like to thank my team, who consists of our marketing guru, Ms. Sam South, along with our advisory council. I hope they are listening in today. And also our team at Municipal Court. Their tireless works make this program a great success. So I will end with this. Please make sure that you share our program. Pardons is always open. If you look at our impressions on social media, you will see the posts and the likes there. And also, we just want to say that we can't grow a city if we don't invest in the people who make the city what it is, our citizens. The mayor saw a need in assisting our citizens with implementing a minor mistakes that should not impede people from obtaining employment. So the mayor is removing barriers by putting people first and revitalizing our communities. And now I will turn it back over to Tish. Thank you all.
How exciting is that? If you remember, the CTA call to action, share, 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 let people know that this opportunity exists. And now I am going to bring up Kelvin Datcher from the Office of Governmental Affairs as well. I don't know about you, but I am excited to hear about the American Rescue Plan and the $148 million that Birmingham has been granted. So there's a lot more information that he's going to share, but I'm excited to welcome Kelvin Datcher up.
Good morning, Tish. Always steals the thunder because the big number is always what gets everyone's attention. But there's a lot of things that we're working on here at the city under the mayor's leadership that will directly impact and benefit our residents. We're very fortunate that we had great leadership with the mayor and the council, who made some very difficult decisions last year to talk about and address COVID challenges proactively. It puts the city in a position now to pursue and leverage federal funding that we really worked at the federal level with our partners to make sure was coming down to not just the city, but our citizens as well. So on December 27th, President Trump signed a bill that was passed by the House and the Senate that provided, among other things, $25 billion in emergency rental assistance for residents who needed it all across this country. Birmingham was fortunate in that, as an entitlement city, we received a direct allocation. We have more than 200,000 residents, and we met that criteria. We're also a community development block grant entitlement city, which allowed us to get just north of $6.272 million that we can use to directly impact our citizens who are renters who meet three very specific criteria. One, they can tell us that their household has been impacted by COVID financially. Two, they're at a risk of housing instability, which means they're behind on their rent, or they're at potentially they can't pay their rent in the upcoming month. And they have a threat to not being able to pay their utilities as well. And then three, they have to be at or below 80% of the average median income for the area. So for a family of four in Birmingham, that's just about $58,500 that would then qualify you for those numbers. And these numbers are set by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we are making sure that folks know the exact criteria so you can know if you can benefit from this program as we begin to stand it up. some of our other partners, like Jefferson County, for instance, received $13.5 million. And at the state level, the Alabama Housing Finance Authority will be managing $250 million that the state received in emergency road assistance. And we provide those numbers because we are working very closely with both the county and the state to make sure that our residents receive the maximum share that they can get. And so after President Biden came into office, he worked with the Senate and the House, and they've then since passed the American Rescue Plan. This $1.9 trillion plan has some real major impact points that the federal government's targeting. Most importantly, is COVID mitigation, right? But there are other things as well, as you can see on the screen. If you go to the very bottom of it, that's what we're here to talk about now. There was $350 billion set aside for states, counties, and local governments to directly benefit from the American Rescue Plan. As Tish mentioned, the city of Birmingham has been allocated $148,820,000. Our friends at the county, right across the park, will be receiving just $127,730. Mobile about 60 million, Montgomery about 42, and then Huntsville about 35 million. We wanted to give you those numbers so you would understand the context of what's been awarded. And there was a modified community development block grant that was used to allocate those dollars, taking into account the housing stock and the poverty income numbers from those localities. So Birmingham will be receiving that $148 million in two tranches. The first one is just over $74 million within 60 days of signing that bill. So we project that to be maybe mid-May at some point. And then the law says that 1 year after you receive that first bucket of dollars, you receive the balance, the 50% balance that is remaining. So it's about $74 million for the city in May and about $74 million next May. Now, there are four real criteria, right, for how these dollars can be spent. We have not received the full guidance yet from the federal government, but we know a couple of things. First and foremost is to respond to the pandemic, the health and economic crises created by the pandemic. Two, to provide eligible workers a premium pay to recognize and reward their sacrifice over the last year. The mayor has made that priority one, job one, for us to make sure we understand how we can find a way to acknowledge what, quite frankly, what the heroes have done here in our community. Also, there's a gap. They're allowing us to address kind of a gap in revenues. As you may know, Birmingham anticipated a $63 million shortfall in our fiscal year 2021 budget due to COVID. This would allow us to somewhat address that, begin to make up for some of the things that we had to potentially had to eliminate, and then pursue opportunities to gain our footing and then launch us forward to what should be the greatest economic year in the history of our city. And then fourth, to make necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband technology. And we're showing you here a letter that was sent by the U.S. Conference of Mayors to the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. We work very closely with the USCM, literally on a daily basis right now. And we're showing this letter because the thousands of mayors who are leading their cities through the COVID crisis, just as Mayor Woodfin all have many of the same questions. So there were 14 pages of questions, matter of fact, sent to the White House. How can we use those dollars? What are eligible expenses? What are the criteria for expenses? When do we have to report back on the money? When is our final date that we can spend the dollars? All those things that drive the decision-making for the mayor and the council to make sure that we impact our community to the maximum amount with these dollars. One of the other things that we're doing and that the mayor has led us to make sure that we do is there are several other opportunities inside the American Rescue Plan to impact our citizens and, very importantly, our small and Black-owned businesses. There are a couple that I'll just point out, and I'll get out of your way because there's many more exciting things happening here that we want to talk to you about today. But one is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. $28.6 billion has been set aside for restaurants who are really on the cusp of of survival, right? The federal government is set aside this grant program, and the city will be providing technical assistance to restaurants around this country. Because you may make the very best fried chicken or the best cheesecake in the world, but you may not be the best kind of, record keeper. You may not be able to understand how to apply for these dollars. It's Birmingham's job, under Mayor Woodfin's direction, to make sure that we work hand in hand with our restaurants to make sure that they are eligible and that they apply for these dollars. And that will also include not just restaurants, brick and mortars, but food trucks and caterers as well. And then finally, the Shuttered Venues Operator Grant. That portal is opening on April 8th. And so all the folks who do concerts and events that rely on visitor income to keep themselves alive, to pay their employees so the employees can take care of their families, that grant is coming online in the next month. We will be there for you. We will be working with you, and we will make sure that you have all of the support you need to apply for those grants and then remain and continue to be a part of the fabric of our great community. So with that, I'd like to thank you. We will be coming back. The mayor's made a commitment that he will be providing regular updates about the American Rescue Plan and its impact on the city over the next year. And so get ready for that. Stay tuned. And we will be sure to give you as many answers to your questions, hopefully before you ask them, as possible. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Tish. Thanks so much for your time.
Get ready, get ready, get ready. That was the theme that I got out of that. Exciting things per usual coming down. One of the next things he mentioned on April 8th, so make sure you guys mark your calendars and get ready to go online and apply for those grants. So next up, we have Shonda Temple. She's going to talk to us about Strong Her. And in 2019, Mayor Woodfin's administration launched the Strong Her campaign to highlight some of the unsung heroes, living, working, volunteering, and inspiring others in Birmingham. And so I'm excited to introduce Shonda, and she also has a special guest that she will then introduce.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It is indeed a pleasure to be here. When we launched Stronger with the mayor 3 years ago, he definitely knew that there were so many, like you said, unsung females here in the community. And since we've launched it, we have highlighted breast cancer survivors, teachers, doctors, CEO, business owners, and just basically women with a passion for helping others. This year, our list was truly amazing. We had everyone from individuals working in the funeral home division to the Carver High School girls basketball team winning their first state championship, and the list goes on and on. But you know what? One individual who really stood out, all of these, first of all, were outstanding individuals, but one student who really stood out was Jemiah Anderson. She is a 13-year-old from Putnam Middle School. She's in the 7th grade, and she wrote her first poem at the age of 6. Now she's 13. And she is also a published author in that her first poem appears in the Desert Supply Company's latest book known as Forgetting How to Spell Remember. Jemiah works with Disco in that she works with their poetry workshops, and she is a rock star with them. And once you meet Jemiah and talk to her, you will understand her rock star status. I was just overwhelmed by her. She is just outstanding. And we will just get everything started this morning to show you why Jemiah is one of our Strong Her honorees for 2021. So Jemiah, welcome this morning.
Good morning.
So Jemiah, first of all, how do you feel being honored this year, being in a list with so many other courageous, confident, bold, and innovative women?
It feels very rewarding. It feels a little nerve-wracking is a nervousness, but it's very rewarding. And I'm very appreciative that I was even nominated to be with so many strong and courageous women. So,
and Jemiah, I remember, Jemiah, you telling me that you have big goals for yourself. Already you're writing poems, you are doing well in school, but you said you see yourself in 5 years going on to college. And there are 2 goals that you've set for yourself. You either A, want to be a neurosurgeon, or B, you want to be an entrepreneur. And when you told me those were your goals, you said that either career path you take, you want to change. You want to bring change. So what does change look like for you, Jemiah?
Change for me looks like um, breaking down stereotypes, breaking family traditions, just being outside the box, not being closed down into one thing, just being able to better myself so I can help others better themselves.
And Jemiah, in talking to you, one thing that I learned or I was just reminded of is that our children are our future. You have a bright future ahead of you. So what is one thing that you would want people to know, that what can we learn from the younger generation of today?
We can learn from the younger generation that our voices matter too, because at the end of the day, we are the future, so our voices matter too. And it may
Okay.
not, that's it.
No, you said our voices matter too, and I cut you off. What was the last part?
It may not be something that we can physically change, but our voices matter to something we could verbally change.
Okay, great. And since we're talking about voices, we want to hear you recite your poem that appears in the latest disco publication. So could you share the poem with us this morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's a Saturday night. My friends and I are watching the dark blue sky. The freezing temperature calls for a blanket. The sparkling dancing stars put me in a daze. I think about my wonderful future. I feel my fingers tingle while we wait for my mother's warm, spicy, mouth-watering tacos to finish. We look at the stars, thinking about what will happen next in our world.
Okay, thank you, Jemiah. And one of the things, Jemiah, can you turn on your camera? I want people, before we exit for this session, them to be able to see your lovely face this morning.
Start video.
And if you're having, okay, I can see you, but other people may not, but that's fine. That's fine. So Jemiah, we just want to thank you so much for sharing that this morning. And do you have any parting comments before we kick it back over to our host?
No, ma'am.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And again, if individuals want to learn more about StrongHer, they are featured on the city's social media pages. That's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can see all past honorees on our website at birminghamal.gov/StrongHer. And StrongHer is spelled STRONGHER. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shonda, and thank you, Jemiah, for that inspiration. When I was researching Jemiah and StrongHer and Shonda, I read Jemiah's poem that she wrote when she was 6 years old, and it was, "When you fall, you have to get back up. You can't just stay down forever." And talk about a life lesson from our future. And she's right. Our children are definitely the future. And so I'm excited about the future of Birmingham, if it's anything like Jemiah. Next up, we have social justice updates from Denise Gilmore. And she will be talking about some of the things that are happening in Lynn Park, the Women's Initiative, which is dear to my heart, and the updates with AG Gadsden. Turning it over to Denise.
Good morning, Tish, and thank you so much. I'm delighted to share just a few updates. Let me start by saying the Division of Social Justice and Racial Equity is a multidisciplinary team of social justice advocates. We lead, facilitate, and/or collaborate on a broad social justice portfolio, including LGBTQ affairs, cultural preservation, policing, reentry, restorative justice, our faith leaders, homelessness, immigration, and of course, ACE, which Tish is a proud graduate. But let me start first with the AG Gadsden Motel. As you've probably seen in the news recently, we've marked a major milestone in the restoration of the AG Gadsden Motel, the historic centerpiece of the Birmingham Civil Rights National Monument, where Reverend Shuttlesworth, Dr. Martin Luther King, and other civil rights leaders gathered to strategize the protest of 1963. A replica of the original sign has been installed, and we now move to complete the 1968 wing and courtyard. The remaining restoration work will be finished by June of 2022. The City and National Park Service will work collaboratively to program and activate the site for visitor experiences. The Gaston Motel is a site of conscience. It is a place for collective memory and stands as a testament for those who were on the front lines of the struggle for civil rights. And so next, I'd like to share an update on the Women's Initiative. 31 City of Birmingham women are serving on the first core leadership team for the Women's Initiative. Launched in December of 2020, this initiative was established by the Office of Peace and Policy at the direction of Mayor Woodfin to improve the lives of women and children in Birmingham. The core leadership team will work with the city's Division of Social Justice and Racial Equity to address community issues such as wellness, health disparities, domestic violence, and human trafficking. The core will assess, identify, and share best practices in order to make recommendations to Mayor Woodfin during their 2-year term. We anticipate that the voices of these women raised will improve the quality of life for women and children in Birmingham. Lastly, let me share a brief update on Lynn Park. It's really hard to believe, and as Chief Fields said in his opening comments, as we now are in the trial stage for the George Floyd murder, it's really hard to believe that we're approaching 1 year in June since the Confederate monument was removed from Lynn Park. I will co-lead with Graham Betcher, director of the Birmingham Museum of Art, a design planning process that will reimagine Lynn Park for the 21st century modern day Birmingham life. We'll work collaboratively with the Parks and Recreation Board and staff, external partners, stakeholders, and the entire Birmingham community to foster a design planning process that provides for co-creation, co-responsibility, and co-stewardship of this public space. We'll undertake a comprehensive approach to Lynn Park, but place priority on consideration of the renaming of Lynn Park, reflective of its role in today's city. Other considerations include an honest assessment of Lynn Park's current state, consideration of new statuary and monuments, and the development of programming and activation to become a gathering place for all. Of course, an analysis of the capital investment required to bring the planning to reality will complete this reimagination of Lynn Park. So please stay tuned for the notices of public workshops. Your participation is needed and valued to have a successful outcome. So I thank you for this time to share these social justice updates and look forward to your participation as we move ahead. Tish, thank you.
Thank you, Denise. So that's all for our city-led initiatives. And now we're going to transition to some of the partner-led initiatives. The awesome part about this is knowing that our city is committed to locking arms with others to bring amazing resources to our community. No one sits on an island and no one can do it all themselves, right? And that's what collaboration, cooperation, and partnership really looks like. But before I bring up our next guest, I do want to remind you that we have set aside time for Q&A. So please use the chat function. Please use the Q&A function. I want to see some comments. I want to see some action happening there. I want your questions to be heard while we have our panel here that can answer those questions. So please do not be shy, okay? So first up is Ivan Holloway. He is the Executive Director of Urban Impact, and he's going to talk to us about the Northwest Downtown Quadrant of Birmingham. Fun fact, Birmingham is home to 2 districts that are critical to the economic and cultural future of Birmingham. Those 2 districts are the Civil Rights District, of course, and the Switch, which was once called Innovation District. So these districts have local, national, and international significance, and they are truly central to our story here in Birmingham. So we're going to hear from Ivan, and we're also going to hear from Darren Meyer, who is an urban planner. Ivan, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tish. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Ivan Holloway, Executive Director of Urban Impact, and we have been so privileged to partner with Mayor Woodfin and his office, along with Ed Fields. This project is so meaningful to the city of Birmingham because of its history, but more importantly, because of its future. Over the last several months, we've been spending a great deal of time developing a series of strategies with our partners, Alabama Power, and of course, Rev Birmingham, with the leadership and guidance of Ed Fields and the mayor's office. Today, I want to introduce you to Darren Meyer, who is the principal at MKSK Planning, who will be leading this conversation for us today. Over the last several months, we've done a number of deep dives with our community stakeholders and partners as to what the vision should be for the Civil Rights District and the Switch District. And you will be surprised what people have said. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Darren Meyer, who's going to walk us through our process and where we are to date and what's left on the table for our implementation strategy. Darren?
Thank you, Ivan. My name is Darren Meyer. It has been my honor to work on such a significant project, an area that's a local treasure, and as Tish said, has both national and international significance. And it's been a real pleasure to get to know the Birmingham community better as part of that process. In this view, you can see the area where we're focusing, the northwestern quadrant of downtown. It is the southern portion of the Fountain Heights neighborhood, adjacent to the Smithfield neighborhood, and home to the Civil Rights District and the Innovation District, the Switch. And our goal is to look both at this geography specifically, but more importantly, how it connects to these surrounding neighborhoods and the greater Birmingham community. On the next slide, you can see three of our pillars for how we're approaching this work and our overall time frame. The first is making sure that we understand and build on local assets and local strengths as the foundation for all of our work. The second is really following the strong lead of the mayor in terms of looking at how we plan a design for people first in this portion of the community. And then looking both at near-term opportunities, but more importantly, how do we create the framework to sustain long-term creation of value and how that value can be captured and recycled in the local community. The foundation for our work is engagement with the local community. And you can see some of the numbers here that reflect the work that we've done over the past several months, both in online forums during the COVID period. We've had a lot of great conversations, including 12 community roundtables, where we've had conversations with the neighborhoods, the business community, and the faith community. And I wanted to share with you 7 themes that emerged from that effort. What you see in blue are direct quotes or excerpts that we heard as part of our work with the community. The first, be bold, be courageous, speaks to the high aspirations of the work that we're doing. The importance to the Birmingham community and the goals for our work are high. We look to achieve great things as part of this process. The second theme that we heard through our community engagement is be sure the right story is told. And this speaks to telling the civil rights story and the Birmingham story with clarity and creativity. But it also speaks to how we ensure that that story is relevant today and in the future, and put the pieces in place to create that strong thread between the history of this important geography of the Birmingham community and what happens in the future. The third, fitting into the whole city, stresses the importance of connecting to the surrounding neighborhoods and rebuilding that community fabric, particularly where it's been disconnected by the interstate corridors historically. The fourth, it needs to feel like community, has to do with the desire to create a vibrant and active neighborhood, a mix of homes and businesses that really creates that strong feeling of community. Next is welcome, clean, and safe as a baseline, looking at making sure that we create a place that serves both locals and visitors in a way that is safe and attractive and welcoming. And then doubling down on innovation and entrepreneurship. This is one of the overwhelming and positive responses we've had throughout this process, is looking both at the history of innovation and entrepreneurship, particularly in the Civil Rights District, and how we can continue to build on that to make the entire Birmingham community competitive as we look forward. And then lastly, and very importantly, as we think about future investment and future development in this area, how do we do that in a way that benefits the local community? So we have three strategies that have grown out of these conversations with community. And you can see on the next slide, the first of those is the desire to better connect these districts to the surrounding neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So thinking about what are those key corridors that allow us to create walkability and access and a welcoming environment, reconnecting the northern part of Fountain Heights to the southern part in this area, better connecting to the community assets and neighborhood assets in the Smithfield neighborhood, and connecting to downtown and surrounding urban districts. So how do we make those more welcoming and inviting and walkable as part of this? The next strategy is to anchor, thinking about future growth and development in this district being anchored by the cultural assets that are there and by the incredibly important public spaces and parks, which have so much value for community use and benefit, but also drivers of economic development and economic growth. And then the third is clustering. So when we think about both the Main Street businesses and the high growth innovation companies, the benefits of clustering and agglomeration are among the strongest drivers of success for business. So we want to look at how we create that critical mass and nucleus of energy around existing Black-owned businesses, innovation companies, entrepreneurs, and small businesses that exist in the district, and how we can invest in a way that will have the greatest and most positive spillover effect to build momentum throughout this district and the entire Birmingham community. And the last slide that I want to share with you speaks to the final and seventh theme of our community engagement, which is creating the infrastructure for all to grow. So how do we look at putting the strategies and tools in place as a framework to make sure that future growth and future development benefits the local community? So you can see 6 of the pillars that are driving that, looking at the creation of a mixed income development so that we have housing of different types and price points that can accommodate all users and those that want to live in the district. The second, looking particularly at the legacy business owners and as well as the residents in the surrounding neighborhoods to make sure that as we see future growth and investment that we don't experience displacement. The importance of being able to capture value through growth in the neighborhood and recycle that locally and build community wealth. Looking carefully at our public realm and the civic identity of the district and how we continue to have that welcoming and inviting public space as the framework for growth. And then the last two, which are very closely related, is how we can provide strong support to Black-owned businesses, to startup, to entrepreneurs, and have that bedrock of innovation and entrepreneurship, which is such a key part of the history and future of these districts. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to share this update with you, and we look forward to any questions or discussion.
Awesome. I have so many questions as a small business owner. I have lots of questions for you, but I would like to know, is it okay to go ahead and ask them now, or should I? Okay. I am curious to know what should people or where should people go to find out more information, like next steps? Ivan or Darren?
Yes, we have a website, and I will post it in the chat, which talks about our progress and our community engagement, and you can learn about upcoming events and how to get more involved.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right, next up we have Danielle Lamb from MasterCard in Solidarity. Cool thing about this, MasterCard has pledged $500 million to help close racial wealth and opportunity gaps for Black communities across America. So when I first saw this, I saw that they were starting their initial projects in Los Angeles, which is where I just moved from, Atlanta, and New York. And I thought to myself, come on to Birmingham. And now here we are. So I'm excited about the information they are going to share. So make sure you guys have your notes. Please ask questions in the chat, and let's get engaged and find out more on how we can help some of our business owners in the community. Danielle?
Thanks, Tish. And actually, before we get started, I want to introduce our surprise guest, Executive Vice President of Global Cities, Miguel Gamino, who just joined us.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Danielle. Thank you, Mayor Woodfin, Ed, Catricia, Kelvin, the whole city team for the partnership. I'm just dropping in for a minute to share a couple top of mind thoughts, and then I'll hand it over to the brains of the operation, Danielle and Michael. But I want to make clear that Birmingham is top of mind for MasterCard and for our leadership, and appreciate this growing partnership. And everybody's aware we're working really closely with the staff to enable these resources, and additionally making investments in our partners who are also focused in Birmingham, like Mocafy nearby and Regions Bank, to make sure that we show up in Birmingham holistically and thoughtfully. And so I just want to be clear and communicate that you should know that the door is open to me directly anytime, and our executive team. In fact, Mayor Mike Froman wanted me to be sure to pass along his hello, wished he could be here. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you in person soon, and maybe even before the World Games next summer. So with that, I just wanted to, again, underscore our support for the effort for Birmingham, for the mayor and team. And with that, I'll hand it over to Danielle and Michael to talk through our in solidarity commitments and our existing engagements with the city of Birmingham. So thanks.
Thanks, Miguel. So today I'll cover the company-wide in solidarity effort that MasterCard has made a commitment. And then Michael will drill it down and highlight some of the top priorities and engagements that we have with the city of Birmingham. So last summer, in light of the Black Lives Matter movement, MasterCard made a commitment of $500 million across 5 years to address the racial wealth and opportunity gap for Black Americans, and specifically in 7 cities, which I can share more about. So the $500 million is going to be spread across 3 pillars. We have the first pillar, which is the people pillar. It's internally facing at MasterCard, how we diversify our talent pipeline, how we create more upskilling and opportunities for our employees. The marketplace pillar is about how we diversify the vendors that we work with. And for example, how can we get more Birmingham-based businesses to win first-time contracts with a corporation like MasterCard or any of our partners. And the third piece is society, which is really where we work very closely with Mayor Woodfin's administration. And so if we go to this slide right here, I can highlight what it means in the society pillar. So society pillar means we want to provide as many resources as possible in kind to Birmingham that's off the shelf and easy within MasterCard's wheelhouse. So there's a lot of things that we do that you would think falls in our scope, like small business resources, data and services, safe financial products, access to capital, for example, and leveraging our entire network of partners. And then there's a lot of other things that don't fall within our wheelhouse, but MasterCard does support, like police reform, active bystandership training, deploying our data resources to measure the policy impacts. For example, of diverting 911 calls, what does that policy impact look like to residents? And this is also something that we would work on and partner with the city. There you go, the next slide. And so the 7 cities are here in front of the map, obviously Birmingham being one of them. And so what we did was we met with Mayor Woodfin and his team, and we said, you know, what is Birmingham doing to address the racial inequities? And Mayor Woodfin highlighted a number of different priorities for the city, which we absolutely worked hard to get our resources out there to advance those priorities. We also worked closely to get things off the shelf within MasterCard's scope into Birmingham's hands. For example, the city has access to MasterCard spend data. So it's called Geo Insights. And that's a way a city can identify, for example, maybe food deserts or any neighborhoods that are lacking essential services. We can measure what neighborhoods are getting spending spikes and what neighborhoods are getting spending decreases. So these are the types of tools and insights that MasterCard is making available to Birmingham through our In Solidarity partnership. And so I'll pass it over to Mike at the top engagements.
Great, thanks, Danielle. If we can move to the next slide. So yeah, I think similarly to what Danielle mentioned, so we are looking at sort of our full set of resources to support Birmingham with things like affordable financial products, small business, data, and we've worked together with the city and our partners to sort of bring all of that full scope of access to all of these initiatives. And so in the next slide, I think we'll go into sort of more of the specifics of which projects we have ongoing with the city. So if you can move to the next one again. Sorry, next slide. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'll drill down to a couple of the highlights of the project. So one initiative from a financial literacy perspective and education and entrepreneurship education, this is a big priority for MasterCard itself, and it was a big priority for the city. And that's one thing that I want to highlight as well. One of our intent here is to support the city initiatives in the way that are proposed to us, and we bring sort of the support based on those priorities. So financial literacy being one that we are both sort of aligned on. We're providing tools and education to students across from like Miles College and HBCU to other sort of programs like Birmingham Promise, and as well as sort of adult programs that will plug in and provide tools to learn entrepreneurship skills and upskilling itself. So our partner Nefty is working together very closely with us on that in the city as well. Small business opportunities is also one that is very exciting for us in terms of course, we know particularly with COVID, how small businesses are struggling. And what we are aiming to do and what we're working to do is essentially expanding the ability that small business owners, Black small business owners in the city, have the ability to service their customers on a digital platform. So essentially selling their goods online and enabling bookings and accepting payments in a digital way, which is very important in this day and age, of course, as you all know. So we're bringing also together to the table partners like Square, Nearby, Acción, to build sort of programs to enable these small businesses and small business owners to take sort of the next steps in their digital evolution. Similarly, and Danielle alluded to this, data is one area that we focus a lot as well in terms of giving access to the city to a MasterCard spend, aggregated, anonymized data to draw insights from. Which helps in things like enabling knowledge about the commercial corridors in the city, how small businesses are performing, enabling sort of other sort of use cases in terms of understanding sort of the performance of the city from a spend perspective. And we've also sort of tagged our talent, our data talent, to help with consulting to utilize that data in the best way possible. So very exciting for sort of the things to come from that. And also one area that I want to highlight significantly also is our partner with Mocafy in terms of the municipal ID, and we call City Key, to enable disbursements of funds to residents, as well as to providing access to services that the city may provide, like the access to library and other sort of systems in the city. So essentially that city key card would enable, will have both the ID as well as sort of the enablement of the payment and the receiving of the payment, dispersing of the funds that the city may have. So those are some of it. In the of course the slide have more. We'll be glad to sort of continue the work together and expand sort of the opportunities. And of course, we welcome any questions later on as well, and we can drill down further.
And thanks, Michael. I just want to add on to that. The MasterCard engagement is continuous, and we are always looking to deepen our partnership with Birmingham. So this is just the first start, definitely not the entirety of it. And so I already took a bunch of notes about what other initiatives are on the docket for the city, and there's a lot of other resources that we can deploy as well. So we are definitely here for the long run. Thank you for inviting us.
Awesome, exciting stuff. So if any of you have questions about any of the other initiatives that were mentioned, please reach out to Chief Fields or Catricia and just follow up, and they'll be able to get you in touch with the right person. Next up, I have Birmingham Promise. Ms. Crystal Ash will be helping talk about what's going on with Promise. Fun, quick story about Promise. It was actually the first organization when I moved back to Birmingham that I was able to assist. So I was the first success coach, which you'll probably hear about, and it's very near and dear to my heart. And one awesome statistic that I've recently heard is that Promise has assisted approximately 400 Birmingham students to start college. So if that is not amazing about the promise that is the future of Birmingham, I don't know what else is. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Crystal Ash to talk about Birmingham Promise.
Thank you so much, Tish, and good morning to everyone. As Tish stated, my name is Crystal Ash. I'm the Student Success Manager with the Birmingham Promise, and such an awesome program to be able to share with you this morning about how we're positively impacting the lives of Birmingham City School students, particularly graduates as well as juniors and seniors with our apprenticeship program. Of course, there are two parts, the scholarship program and the apprenticeship program. I'll tell you a little bit more about those in terms of numbers. I did want to share on the scholarship side how we're impacting students just from an anecdotal state, is thinking about students who are on the campus of, say, UAB or UA, who over the years they dreamed of being there but didn't necessarily know how they would get there because of finances being a barrier. And Birmingham Promise is now allowing them that bridge to be able to get to those campuses and be seen as leaders on campus. And so those are the things that we are passionate about with Birmingham Promise. In terms of numbers and our impact, we, as Tish stated, almost 300. We're supporting currently with our scholarship program 396 students. Those students are receiving financial support through their tuition and mandatory fees being covered by Birmingham Promise. Students are also at our priority institutions, and those are indicated on the screen. Those are where we have students who are densely populated at those particular schools. Those students are being supported by student success coaches to face any barriers that they may face. They're helping them to guide them through those barriers, whether it's academically, socially, or financial, to aid in their success at those schools. On the apprenticeship side, since the summer of 2019, we have about 150 students who participated in the apprenticeship program. Students earn a living wage at $15 an hour and an academic credit for work experiences with high growth in local companies. We're always thankful to our employers for being able to not only provide students with the experience but to nurture their professional development as well. Next slide, please. And as you can tell, 2020 was very, It was a very challenging year for most of us, but particularly for our students for the academic year, shifting between virtual and in school and blended learning and things of that nature. And so we've been able to support students through that by maintaining communications with them and helping to support them through their academic studies at the various universities. But it has presented a challenge at times, but we continue to, as we strengthen our team, be able to support those students. Of course, with Birmingham Promise, the ultimate goal is to promote economic mobility amongst Birmingham City School graduates. It is our hope that those students will take advantage of this opportunity to further their education and to be better at what it is that they're called to do in life, and that in return, they will then utilize and allow that investment to grow, to come back into the city, to invest their talent, their time, and their tremendous abilities back into the city of Birmingham. The most important way to support Birmingham Promise is essentially just spreading the word, letting students know that these opportunities and this funding is available specifically for Birmingham City School students. That is the most important thing that we can share with the community, is that this is an opportunity to help our students, the best and the brightest that we know of in our city, to shine across the state and beyond. And so thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to share Birmingham Promise with you. Thanks, Tish.
Thank you, Crystal. That is truly exciting to see the growth and progress that has happened since the summer of 2019, which is actually when I moved back to Birmingham and was blessed to be a part of Assisting Promise. So some of the, I guess, through line information that I've gotten has basically been to spread the word, like get out there, spread the word, talk about some of these opportunities and initiatives. If it's not something that will help you personally, then I'm sure there's someone within your family, friends, circle, community that this information will help. Again, if you have any questions about anything that you've heard, please reach out to Chief Ed Fields, and he will be able to direct you to the correct department. So again, thank you. I am now going to bring up Chief Ed Fields for closing remarks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tish. I wish we were in person so everybody could give her due acknowledgement. Thank you so much. You know, we are always finding ways to include community voice in what we do. Tish has been with us for a couple of years now, showing up in many spaces. In fact, I was told that she just ran for a neighborhood officer position. They voted on yesterday. Perhaps we'll find out if she became a neighborhood officer or will become one for her neighborhood. So that was born out of her involvement in ACE. So how about that for a continuum of effort? Listen, as we bring this to a close, I want to share a couple of important notes. First, just another acknowledgement and thanks to our mayor, for his leadership and his vision for driving us forward, for taking care of our employees in the form of putting people first and foremost, taking care of our employees. I also want to acknowledge our partners here, y'all. So let me make sure we understand why we're here today. Most of the people listening right now are actually city employees. They are department heads and mayor staff. They are people who typically meet once a week for 3 weeks out of a month under the leadership of our Chief of Staff, Cedric Sparks. We have off weeks where we don't meet. We basically give you your time back. And when we realized that there were 5 weeks in this month, that there'd be 2 weeks where we're not engaging you, we took it as an opportunity to at least share more and go deeper on big partnerships and big programs that we ordinarily just wouldn't have the time to do. So we're publishing a survey following this meeting. We're going to be sending that out to everyone that registered, those folks who are in leadership, particularly in mayor staff. We want you to complete the survey so you can let us know how this program was, what needs to be different next time, if there should be a next time. This is a bit of a one-off, but there's so many things happening. And so to that end, I just want to go back through and acknowledge our team members. I guess the other important point is that this is the 31st of March, the end of the first quarter of the calendar year, the end of the third quarter of the fiscal year for the city, the completion of our Strong Her initiative, the wrap up of a 90-day push for Partners for Progress, and for all the other programs you've heard, there's a lot of things rolling. So I'd be remiss if I didn't just circle back through and acknowledge Tiffany Thompson for all of her great work on Partners for Progress program. There's a lot more behind the scenes that has happened. This is unprecedented for the city to use its executive power to help relieve and make life easier for folks to get jobs. Kelvin Datcher for all of his work with our federal team in securing those dollars for the city, particularly the ARP funds. Thank you for your leadership, Kelvin. Shonda Temple and her partner in crime, Edward Bowser, for their leadership on Strong Her. Shonda has not only been a principal writer for that initiative, but has been a principal champion. Thank you for bringing the young lady to the fore so we can hear the voice and actually really see and hear a testimonial. I want to acknowledge Denise Gilmore and her team with the Social Justice and Racial Equity Division. Lots coming up there. Thank you for your leadership. And then our partners, Darren Meyer is representing the consulting group, but the local leadership is really represented by David Fleming, Ivan Holloway, and other partners, strategic partners, which I won't go through and naming everyone, but I want to thank Ivan and David and Darren for their participation. This effort, we never really considered the Northwest Quadrant of downtown in the way that we are all together. So we're excited about that. They got a whole website with recordings of their conversations. I encourage you all to go take a look at that. And then finally, well, not quite finally, Danielle Lamb. That was a great surprise to see Miguel on. To have their executive leadership represented on this conversation is big and prioritizes the city of Birmingham. We are, frankly, a competitive city. We feel like our city is best positioned to make that 500 million pop. And to that end, if we have department heads that heard really good things that they love about the MasterCard partnership, I want you to know that there's more doors that they can open, but we need to be creative and thinking about solutions. The same can be said for the Northwest Downtown Quadrant. They're moving into a phase to make our civil rights district readily available to equitable development that we can be proud of, that supports the current businesses there. We're going to need our departments and our leaderships and people who are really advocates for our sacred spaces to really be involved. So expect follow-up from Ivan and his team on that front. And finally, Birmingham Promise. We've all heard a lot about the Promise. We asked Crystal and her leader, Rachel Harmon, to be available to provide this update because this program is really transforming lives at a critical time for first-year college students, which represent this class of the 2020 class of Birmingham City Schools. And so that's it, y'all. We're going to give you some of your time back. We thank you so much for your attention today. We hope you stay safe, stay dry, and keep putting people first. Have a great, great week.